Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Welcome to Inside Scoop, Virginia. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and joining me tonight is Kimberly Adams, who is president of the Fairfax Education Association. Thank you so much for being here. Before we get started on our show tonight, I did want to acknowledge the heartrending situation in Orlando. Tonight, even as we start this broadcast at 7 p.m., there are vigils being held around Virginia and around the country to show our solidarity with the LGBT community and with the people of Orlando. This is a horrific shooting, the worst in U.S. history. And I didn't want to start this evening without acknowledging the heartache that is going through so many in our community tonight. The show will be available on YouTube after the broadcast, and so if you can't be with us live, you will see it later on. So thank you, Kimberly, for being here with us tonight to talk about the meals tax that is being proposed in Fairfax County. This is a hot topic, is it not?
It is definitely a hot topic. Thanks for having me on.
Well, so how long have you guys actually been working on this?
Well, I think it's been a lot of years in the making, but definitely since 2014, when Sharon Bulova convened the Meals Tax Task Force. We really knew that it was something that we needed to get into and really find out more about and understand it and how it could help our community.
So I had heard you speak previously about the meals tax and the necessity of coming up with additional revenue. We're going to hear later from Supervisor John Cook, who's talked quite passionately about teacher pay, because our teachers have not had a pay raise, I believe, in 3 years. And we've had unfilled slots at the beginning of the last school year because we are not paying what he aptly called, we're not paying to market scale. And so let's go back to fixed costs, though. Let's talk about the bus system. I was absolutely shocked when you said in your last presentation that the Fairfax County Public School System has the largest fleet of buses of anyone in the country.
We do. We are actually larger than Greyhound. So we operate more buses on a regular basis to move more people than Greyhound bus does.
And that's every day.
Yeah.
That's a fleet larger than anyone else's every single day, moving thousands of kids among hundreds of schools.
Yeah.
And so to me, that is a fixed cost where you can do something with class size, make it a little bigger. There's a lot of places where you can cut, but fixed costs in schools are one of the places we really don't have a lot of flexibility.
Right, and we've got to maintain that bus fleet. So those costs there are always on the rise, and keeping up with buses and maintenance for those buses has fallen behind in recent years, as you might imagine, with budget constraints. And so catching up on those things is something we have to put first as well, if we want to make sure our students are safe every day and every morning and every afternoon.
And the thing is, I think when we talk about education, we really are thinking about what goes on in the classroom. I mean, class size, teacher pay, everybody can understand that. But there's a lot more to this than meets the eye, especially when it comes to education's tied to housing. And the reason I say this is because the loss of revenue during the recession had a lot to do with dropping home values, because the source for the school budget is real estate tax.
Right, and we're currently paying about $1,000 less per student, educating at about $1,000 less per student than 2008. So we are not nearly back where we were pre-recession as far as being able to adequately educate our students. And that's everything, like you said, from the teacher in the classroom, to the bus driver, to the cafeteria employee, to the instructional assistant, and all the people in between.
Right, and so we have to come up with a different source of revenue unless we expect every year to meet rising costs or the rising cost of fixed costs to be absorbed simply by a real estate tax. So this meals tax, though, is not 100% about the school budget.
It's not entirely about the school budget. We really want folks to understand that this meals tax, which could generate nearly $100 million, would be something that could be split between schools and other priorities among the county. So human services, fire safety, police safety, all the myriad of things, including parks and libraries that support our residents beyond the schools. Those are things that we really need to target a lot of this money to as well.
So in the estimated, because I've heard that it's like between $90 and $100 million that we're looking at, you're looking at $30 million that would be slated for those kind of human services. And I think I heard tax relief is a possibility too.
And tax relief could definitely be rolled in there somehow. It could definitely be part of capital improvements that we talk about. So this money can be used as bonds going forward. The money can be used for other infrastructure needs, which we know we have in the county going forward. I talked with a gentleman the other day who's been here for 50 years, and he recalls being part of the people who built Fairfax County, and to talk about how some of this infrastructure is beginning to crumble, and he hopes we'll do what we need in order to make it happen.
Right, and and that's one of the things when we talk to Jim Corcoran in our next segment, and we're going to talk about regional economic development and the Chamber's role in that. He convened a panel not too long ago where Bob Buchanan was the moderator, talking about the regional economic strategy for our region. And Jerry Gordon, who's the longtime president of the Economic Development Authority, spoke about how important schools are to bringing companies here to Fairfax County, that companies want to relocate like Volkswagen or Hilton Worldwide, where their employees have quality schools. And so I think there is a tremendous overlap, and which is why we've convened this interesting mix of guests tonight to talk about how we can all kind of get on the same page in a way that works for the schools, in a way that works for our regional economic development strategy. But coming back to restaurants, the other kind of awkward issue in all of this is that they've always been a partner with our schools.
Right. Many restaurants in local areas around our schools support our schools through fundraisers and other events to really make sure that we have some of the resources we need beyond the school budget to fund things like smart board technologies and other things, especially that parent-teacher associations or PTAs are looking to help fund in their schools. So it is a challenge right now because some restaurateurs have said they don't support the meals tax, but they do support our schools, and to find a bridge over that has been a challenge for some PTAs.
I mean, and so my kids went to both city and Fairfax City schools and the county schools, and our city schools actually get services from the county schools. And Fairfax City has had a meals tax for a long time. So has Vienna and a number of localities within Fairfax County. So why do you think that, this is so different from the meals tax in these smaller locations? What is it about this tax at this time that has just hit a nerve?
I'm not sure what it is. And Catherine, we've tried to allay the fears of these folks to let them know that, $96 million would be put into our county needs, but that $3 million approximately would go to make these restaurateurs whole, to make sure that they have the money they need in order to fund their increased costs that they might have with changing the way that they calculate the tax and remit the tax every month. So that has been factored in, and to know that they're partners with our schools going forward, we hoped that that would help them to understand that 70% of this revenue would go to our schools to directly benefit, more than likely, class sizes, educator pay, and other things that we have as needs for our students. So
do you think some of this, the logistics of actually the collecting and reporting and the kind of technical aspect is an undue burden?
I wouldn't imagine that it is, since, like you said, it's already happening in places like Vienna and in places like Alexandria and Arlington, much larger outside than those small cities inside Fairfax County. So if it's being done and it's being done well, there's practices that can be put into place here as well.
And I think going back, restaurants are a very important part of the community. Clearly, people want to move into places. You look at the Mosaic District, for instance, and you look at how people want to live. And restaurants are an important part of that, of having a community where people want to live and to stay. But school systems directly impact the value of homes as well. I just sold a house after 13 years. A couple bought it sight unseen. But I know that the school district that house is in has a direct impact on the value of that house, more so than any of the amenities surrounding it. Do you think the public really kind of understands this intersection of all of these factors as to what makes the school, restaurant, housing, economic development strategy all fit together?
I think there is a bit of education that still needs to happen in our communities, but I think there are a lot more people who are focused on how that drives our economy here in Fairfax County, how our schools and the quality of our schools still draw families here, and that now we're hearing things like, why did I come if they're not going to continue to fund the program, the specific program that I brought my child here for? We have amazing innovation here in Fairfax County, from immersion programs of foreign language to STEM technology.
My kids went to the academies too. I saw everybody posting about the Cappies last night at the Kennedy Center. You know, I was in theater in Southwest Virginia. I can assure you, we didn't have theater programs like that, and we didn't have events like that. I mean, Fairfax County is uniquely situated because of its proximity to the nation's capital. There is a thriving arts culture here. People who come here tend to be highly educated themselves, and all of this factors into the expectations that the community has for what our schools are going to provide.
And we've continued to do that. We've continued to do more with less. And we feel like we're at a point where we need to probably try to do some more with a little more.
So the top two, and again, I know there's a all-day retreat, I believe, tomorrow with the board, school board, and the Board of Supervisors, where I think a lot of discussion is going to be about what will these priorities be for the money, both the money that's been earmarked for the schools and also for these other programs, the tax relief and human services programs.
You know, we have to remember we're talking about $100 million here generated from a meals tax in a budget that's more than $7 billion. So this is not the only piece of revenue that our county needs to discuss, and we understand that these two boards need to get along, and that retreat tomorrow will hopefully be the first of many over the next few years where they will focus on priorities.
Well, I do think it's important, and I don't want to get too far away from housing either, because housing starts during their session all but stopped. So there's actually kind of a backed up demand for housing, but because there wasn't, we were in a tremendous bubble right through 2005, 2006, right until it really all started deteriorating in 2008. But the sources or the potentiality to make more revenue based on the structure we have now, looking at housing and how housing starts, the affordability of housing, and who can even be a homeowner in this county is definitely going to impact, and that's a hard thing I would imagine to predict if you're doing budgeting for a county where the budget is $7 billion.
Right, and of course we're relying on homeowners who've been in their homes for a long period of time, so that tax burden becomes even more of a problem for them, being on fixed incomes and being retired. We have a lot of families who are leaving homes to move into smaller homes for whatever reason, and we've got some homes that are remaining vacant. So we do have, an issue with the property tax. We need to diversify revenue, and this isn't a way to do this. This is a way to bring in revenue that's not just based on home ownership, but is actually based on people coming to this county, people who come here every day. 30% of the people who will pay this tax don't live in Fairfax County.
Right,
they live outside of it. So it's definitely an opportunity, and it's already being realized in places like Arlington and Alexandria. It's time for Fairfax County to do the same.
Well, I appreciate you coming and helping us to illuminate some of these issues. As we go forward, we're going to have two other guests who are going to help us wend our way through these very, very complex issues about the meals tax. This is something every voter needs to be informed about as you go to the polls on November 8th to cast a ballot either for or against this very important referendum. So please join us after the break.
Saving for retirement might be easy for some folk, but for others, it might take a little more work. And for those who haven't started, there are still things you can do to catch up.
Oh, that is good news.
Like getting out from underneath past debt. And don't get wrapped up with high-interest credit cards.
Get you some eyes.
Be diversified with your investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Your financial goals are not out of reach. The choice is clear. For a happy ending, choose to save.
Everyone with alcohol and drug addiction is in the same boat. With treatment, you can find solid ground. For drug and alcohol information and treatment referral for you or someone you know, call 1-800-662-HELP.
Dude, are you sure you want this tattoo? Because just do it.
Some mistakes in life are permanent. Like hearing loss. To learn how to protect your hearing, visit asha.org.
You've probably heard about heart disease, but did you know that it's the #1 killer of women nationwide? Heart disease claims more lives each year than breast cancer, lung cancer, or strokes combined. But there are steps you can take to protect yourself against it. For more information on how you can prevent heart disease, contact your local American Heart Association or visit their website at www.americanheart.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop, where tonight we're talking about the proposed Fairfax County meals tax. My guest in this segment is Mr. Jim Corcoran, who is the CEO and president of the Northern Virginia Chamber of Commerce, formerly known as the Fairfax County Chamber of Commerce. It's kind of like Prince, but not exactly. Welcome, Jim. Thank you so much for coming.
Catherine, thank you so much for having me tonight.
So I am a big fan of the Chamber, and I'm a big fan of the fact that the Chamber had the vision to rebrand itself the Northern Virginia Chamber of Commerce. What was the thought process behind that change?
Well, the Chamber is made up of our members, and the members, when they look at their needs, businesses don't necessarily see themselves as a county-based only chamber of business. They see themselves as a regional business.
Right.
And it may be the Washington region, it may be the Northern Virginia region. And so when they look at their needs, what are they? It's for a workforce that is going to be able to carry out the mission of the organization. It's about transportation. They need to have a regional network of transportation to move their employees and to move their goods and services around the region. When you look at healthcare, when you look at education, gets a little bit more specific when you're looking at K-12, but when you look at the secondary education and the university level, it's all on a regional basis. 35% of the Chamber's members were already based outside of Fairfax County. So it's very natural. For decades, the Chamber has had as a tagline, the voice of business in Northern Virginia.
Right.
And when you look at that, people have always looked to the Fairfax County Chamber as to what position is the Chamber taking when it comes to a legislative piece in Richmond. And we've always had the best interest of the region at heart when doing business in Richmond.
And you've been very instrumental, I know, for the last probably 29, 30 years, in January every year with George Mason University and yourself and who else? At the Cardinal Bank. Mm-hmm. You do a regional economic forum, which is great. I mean, everybody, even though Stephen Fuller keeps saying that this is his last one, so far not yet, but that really does speak to the fact that you're trying to convene thought leaders, business leaders, developers, the people who've been here, who are the movers and the shakers, the people who influence the direction that money and resources and time and people, you know, George Mason University, which is my alma mater, mm-hmm. was really built by a lot of developers who had an interest in having a Northern Virginia university.
There's no question. George Mason is the Northern Virginia University. If it was the University of Northern Virginia, it would be one and the same. But it is George Mason University, and so many graduates from Northern, here you go, from George Mason University are making up the workforce of today for so many of our member companies. It's by far the #1 institution for alumni in the area working here. And you're right, those visionaries who made Fairfax County what it is today, or what it was a little while ago as we transition now, they helped create George Mason University. They went out and made sure that the land was available, and they have supported it. And when you look at the Hazels and the Dewberries, yeah. Buildings are named after them at George Mason University, and it was that business community and that development community that made sure that we had that kind of institution to support all the growth, not just in the business community, but across the region that we've seen here over the past decades.
And I think, to that point, it's been a very education-forward vision, not just about George Mason, but just, as Jerry Gordon had said at the last panel that you convened, that people bring companies here. Companies put their headquarters here because they know their employees value a good education system. And I know that we are stymied by the Dillon Rule. A lot of people don't understand the Dillon Rule state, and that it doesn't all just happen up here in Northern Virginia. And I think that Supervisor Cook will get more in the weeds on that. The reason that you have to take positions legislatively is because what happens in Richmond very much affects what happens in Northern Virginia.
Oh, absolutely. And the Dillon Rule is one of those that the experts know what it means, but basically each jurisdiction, each county cannot just go off and do what they want. You have to follow certain rules to get things done. And in many ways, it's very good to protect the citizens to have the Dillon rule in place, but it can be frustrating at times when you want to do something innovative. You have to go back to the General Assembly to get it done. But having said that, yes, the Fairfax County Chamber, and now the Northern Virginia Chamber, has always had a legislative agenda where we work very carefully in Richmond on behalf of the Fairfax County schools. We this year were looking for additional state funding for the Fairfax County schools and advocated on their behalf. For years, we've advocated for the early start to the school schedule before Labor Day.
Oh, please sign me up for that.
Well, you actually got it
crazy.
Because next year, Fairfax County, but it's a weather exception for which they will get that early start in 2017. But on top of that, the Chamber has always run the capital campaign, the school bond referendum for schools here in Fairfax County every other year. The Chamber has supported that. And this Chamber understands, knows, and supports the fact that schools are critical to the success of the business community too, because those schools, we work in step with them because that is the future workforce.
Oh, it is.
Our business community.
And certainly in restaurants, who's waiting on you? Just the other night, it was a young graduate from McLean who's a freshman at UVA, because a lot of wait staff in our restaurants are kids in our schools.
Absolutely.
So that's a great lead into explaining the Chamber's position on this particular referendum.
Well, I assume you're talking about the meals tax
Yes.
referendum. And like as I just said, the Chamber is 100% behind the schools. We support the schools. We need the schools to be successful, and we'll do what it takes to make those schools successful. However, having said that, we firmly believe that no single industry should bear the cost of meeting the budget needs. It wouldn't be fair to do it to dry cleaners. It wouldn't be fair to do it to lawyers. It wouldn't be fair to do it to any other single industry. And that's what's happening with the restaurants. No other major county in Northern Virginia has a meals tax at this point. It would put Fairfax County at a competitive disadvantage to Loudoun County, to Prince William County, and all the counties as you go further out. Now, Arlington did get a special exception. Arlington sometimes is treated as a city, sometimes it's treated as a county.
Yeah.
So they were able to get that special exception. And when you're a city, you don't have to go to a referendum with the voters. However, when you're a county, because of the Dillon rule that we talked about, the voters will decide. So it is going to be put to the voters. However, the Chamber is concerned the people who are going to be hurt the most by a meals tax are the people who can least afford it. That gentleman or lady who delivers a pizza to your house, and you say, oh, keep the change. Well, you just took some of their tip away. The same thing for that student who is working in the restaurant, and your bill came to $20 or $50, and they say, Catherine, do you want change? You say, no, keep the change. That meals tax took money out of their pocket. It will cost jobs in the restaurant industry because there's only so much money that is going to be collected. The total gate will not go up, probably, when it comes to additional spending of the meals tax. So competitive disadvantage, hurting those people who need the money the most. And 4 out of 5 restaurants already fail in the first 5 years of operation. It's a hard business to be successful at. And now we're going to tax them even more. So it's really not fair to pick on that one industry.
So let's help everybody understand. So the meals tax, what is the restaurant's financial burden on the meals tax as opposed to it being a pass-through from the person who eats there, the customer? What is their financial burden as far as?
Well, the financial burden, there's an administrative burden, so there's a financial burden, and nothing is free, right? If some additional piece of work has to be done, then it needs to be done. But for those people who are on a limited income, they only have a certain amount of money to spend. And if it's $1 or $100, that's what it is. It's not, oh, I can spend $104 now, right? They still have that limited amount of money. So there is that burden that money will not be utilized to improve the restaurant, to market the restaurant. It will be used to pass through as a tax. So it's a transfer of wealth to the county.
You know, it's interesting because I think it was not last year, not this past January, but the January before, Stephen Fuller was talking about where the growth was kind of as we were coming out of the recession. And one of the points that he made is that restaurants were expanding and so were bars, which was problematic because those jobs don't pay a lot. So we don't have enough affordable housing, and we have a lot of people who are working in very low-level jobs. But he was showing us the data that said, even at its worst, people still ate out in restaurants and went to bars. So to my way of looking at this is, if growth is going to happen, I think there could end up being fallout. As you said, 4 out of 5 restaurants fail, and it's true. It's a very hard business to be in. But in this particular area, based on disposable income, just based on just the number of people we have moving into the county every year who do have good paying jobs, do you really expect that in any way the growth of our restaurant industry is going to be impacted substantially by a meals tax?
I'm not saying the growth of the industry, I'm saying the profitability of the individuals in the industry will be impacted. It takes money out of that system and puts it into the transfer of wealth into the county's budget. And by the way, we're not against supporting revenue for tax revenue for the county.
Right, it's just a matter of where does it come from. So things like alcohol and cigarettes, like in Fairfax City, we tax cigarette. Alexandria taxes cigarettes at $1.85. The county's tax on cigarettes is 30 cents, but the county can't go and ask for $1.85.
It's going back to the Dillon rule again.
Right. So we're kind of in a box a little bit. So, and I think John Cook will probably speak to that too, about what are our options? What are the opportunities? If not this, then what? Because whatever it is, you're always going to go back to Richmond and have to get them to approve whatever it is you're trying to do.
Well, the real option is to grow the economy, right?
Absolutely.
And if the economy grows, and there already is a tax mechanism in place to fund the schools through the real estate taxes. We don't need a new tax system, but if we grow the overall economy, if we continue to bring businesses here that will support the growth of the of the economy, we'll all benefit by that. The other thing is that the chamber has sat down with the schools, Dr. Garza, and a number of businesses have volunteered to sit down and work with the schools pro bono to look at opportunities to take costs out of the system. When you were in here with Kim just a little while ago, it was a little bit of a badge of courage that we operate the largest bus system in the United States, bar none. What business are the schools in?
You still have to get the students there and back. How are you going to do that?
In Roanoke, they've privatized that. In Boston, they've privatized that. If you could take those costs, those fixed costs out of the system, what if you saved $100 million? And I'm not suggesting
but once
that
you
you
privatize
could
it, then isn't the control for the cost of that out of your hands? So every year when those costs go up, that is not something you control, right? If you privatized it?
You would based on the contract that's written up, right? But the same thing, if you have a meals tax this year, it's only a one-time thing.
Well, thank you so much. The time has flown by. Thank you so much, Jim Corcoran, for being here
Catherine,
and helping us to understand the business perspective, the Chamber's perspective, and representing their business members on why they are against the meals tax that is on the referendum this November 8th. Please join us after the break.
I need a job.
Necesito trabajo.
I would like to speak English better.
Me gustaría hablar inglés mejor.
I want to be a U.S. citizen.
Quisiera ser ciudadano de los Estados Unidos.
For over 35 years,
Por más de 35 años,
the Hispanic Committee of Virginia has been serving our community.
el Comité Hispano de Virginia ha estado sirviendo a nuestra comunidad.
Job training and placement,
Capacitación, ayuda para conseguir trabajo,
education for children and adults,
educación para niños y adultos,
immigration, naturalization, and medical referrals.
ayuda para los procesos de inmigración y naturalización y orientación sobre médicos
Are a small part of what we do.
son solo una pequeña parte de lo que hacemos.
For help, information, or to volunteer,
Para ayuda, información o para ofrecerse como voluntario,
contact the Hispanic Committee of Virginia,
comuníquese con el Comité Hispano de Virginia,
helping everyone participate more fully in American society.
ayudando a todos a participar plenamente en la sociedad norteamericana.
Hey, Lena, where's yours?
Would you notice if you were missing half your kidney function? According to the National Kidney Foundation, 20 million people have chronic kidney disease, and 20 million more may be at risk and not even know it. Anyone with high blood pressure, diabetes, or family history of chronic kidney disease is at risk. Early diagnosis is vitally important. To get the whole story, talk to your doctor and visit the National Kidney Foundation at kidney.org or call for a free brochure. Because when it comes to chronic kidney disease, you might not know the half.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed. Joining me in this segment is Braddock District Supervisor John Cook of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate the chance to come and talk.
Well, I was sitting at the vote on Tuesday, June the 7th, and there was a lot of discussion among the supervisors before the vote was taken, and it was 8-2 to put this to a referendum. But I was tremendously impressed by your very passionate remarks about teacher pay.
Well, thank you. And you know, this is a difficult issue, this referendum, and anybody who tries to say it's simple, I'm sorry, it's not. We're in a complicated economy. It's been a tough economy, and there's been a lot of things that we have had to set aside, both in our personal lives, businesses, and our government. But we know that teacher pay has fallen behind the market in Fairfax County for a long time. And that should not have happened. Teacher pay should be the top priority of our school system, not down the line. But where we are right now is our teachers are significantly underpaid compared to surrounding jurisdictions. It's about a $100 million gap. Some of that was closed by the Board of Supervisors this spring with the budget, and we need to close the rest of that. And that takes some significant revenue, about $60 million or so. And you know, if we don't pay teachers the market, good teachers don't come here. And that's the most important part of keeping a good school system, is having the best teachers.
Right, and you mentioned that there were, at the beginning of the last school year, 200 vacancies, some of which weren't filled. And you know, like 2 days later, I ran into an art teacher in Fairfax City who basically said at her school there were positions they just didn't fill.
Yeah, I had an elementary school principal in my district who told me this spring that for the first time at the beginning of this school year, she chose to keep 2 positions vacant because the only applicants for those positions were unqualified, you know, in her view. We're not getting the qualified applicants. So sure, are we getting a lot of resumes? Yes, but we want the best resumes to come in for the best teachers. And if you're paying $10,000 below market, you're not going to get that.
And so, and the other side unintended consequence of that too is that we're asking teachers to do more with less, not just resources, dollars, money, but they've got bigger class sizes. They've got bigger class sizes, correct? So when teachers are being, when you don't get that teacher's aide or you don't get the vacancy is not filled, what you're ending up with is you're ending up with a teacher who's got maybe 30 kids in her classroom. You've got a teacher who doesn't have the additional resources that she needs. And so we've frozen their pay. I don't even know how many years it is. 3 years that we've frozen their pay?
Well, it depends on what you mean by a freeze. I think it's fair to say that the study that the school system did showed that over the course of a career in Fairfax County, teachers' earnings are significantly lower, especially in the mid-year, there is a gap.
Right.
So to close that gap so that we match the market, not exceed the market, but just to match the market, requires somewhere in the neighborhood of $100 million. And we've closed part of that, but the challenge is, can we close the rest?
Right, and so now we're going to get into a little bit into the weed that we started with the Dillon Rule State and the fact that as a county, your hands are tied in a way that Fairfax City is not, or Alexandria is not. And so when people are like, we need to diversify revenue, the question is, how do you do that?
Well, we have such an antiquated relationship in Virginia between the state and the counties. We have a 1930s form of government where counties are viewed as these rural entities that have very few needs, very few people. We're an urbanized jurisdiction, and that's different, and that requires a different set of government services. The state basically only gives the county the real estate tax to fund programs. Real estate tax is great to fund your public safety, police, fire, your basic infrastructure. That's what it's designed to do. But in this state, while we're in the top 10 in wealth in the country, we're in the bottom 10 in state funding of education. We're in the bottom 5 in state funding of human services, such as services for people with mental illness and intellectual disabilities. So Fairfax County is funding those state services with county dollars because we believe it's the right thing to do. But we only have the vehicle of the property tax. The state has broader revenue sources, and that's what's needed to do these broader services. The real estate tax was never intended to pay for every service that both local and state government provides.
So isn't that kind of the benefit of creating a tax where you do specifically tell people what it's for?
Well, what we need in the county is we need different sources of revenue because we're too tied to the property tax. The only thing available to us under current state law is this referendum. I don't particularly like a meals tax, but there isn't another option right now, and the General Assembly, quite frankly, doesn't seem inclined to give us other options. Cities have options in addition to the property tax that counties don't have. So we're playing the hand that we're dealt. But ultimately, in the long run, there needs to be a recognition that Fairfax County is an urbanized jurisdiction, and it needs to have urbanized sources of revenue.
So that's something we really kind of need to take up through our Northern Virginia legislative delegation in Richmond.
It is, and it's going to be a challenge because you've got to get a majority in the General Assembly, and so it's hard on a regional issue to achieve that. But look, down the line, we just have to continue to point out to the state that Northern Virginia is changing at a rapid pace, and we have rapid urbanization. That's both good and bad. There are positives and negatives. It's different, and we're much more like a city in many ways. But we are handling government services that in other states the state handles, and it's not doing so here. Do you know that almost every jurisdiction in the state gets a majority of its education funding from the state, except for Fairfax, Loudoun, and Arlington? We get 23% of our education funding for the state. To go to 50%, that's a $500 million gap. So when you're talking about a $100 million meals tax, we're not even...
Right, that's like, it sounds like a lot, but in the scheme of things, it's really not a lot.
It's not in the scope of our government, but we have property taxes that are too high, and it's an unfair burden on seniors especially, people on fixed income, people who have lost their job in the recession, haven't regained the income levels they had in the past. So to continually say, well, if you want to do other things, simply raise the property tax, that's not a good answer in my view. We need something different.
Oh, I agree. And like I said, I think a lot of this, there's such a connection between housing and the education system anyway, because home values are based on the school district they're in. More so in Fairfax County than probably a lot of other places, because we have nationally recognized high schools here. And there are people who want to move not to a specific kind of house, but a house that's in a specific neighborhood so their kids go to specific schools. So not recognizing to me the fact that there is this tremendous interconnectivity between housing values and school and how they're tied together. When the recession came and the bottom fell out of the housing market, there were foreclosures, there were SEOs, there were short sales. It was a mess. And suddenly there was, the value of what you were taxing was dropping, and there was a whole bunch of vacant things that you couldn't tax because who owned it? The bank. So I just, in trying to educate people who are trying to sort this out, I don't know how much more we can do to help them see that this is an ecosystem, and you don't do something one place that doesn't affect everything else, because it's all tied together.
It is tied together, and it's a complex economy. It's a complex web of communities that we have, and so we need more than one source of revenue. This isn't even just about more revenue or less revenue, but it's about diversifying, that is, having different sources of revenue. So for example, if housing values don't always track the economy, so sales taxes do track the economy better. Income taxes, which is a state function, tracks the economy even better than that. But the county can only tap the real estate. So if there's something that needs to be done, but that aspect of the economy went down in a given year, it's not like we can say, well, real estate's down, we'll get money from someplace else instead. We only have one source, and that's what's not working.
You know, and that's interesting too, because the whole success of Fairfax County has been about diversifying our economy. And I mean, Jerry Gordon and Stephen Fuller and Bobby Buchanan, everybody else will say that it's been about the fact that we are not like Dalton, Georgia, dependent on carpeting. We're not dependent on coal. We are not dependent on biomedical firms like they kind of are in Montgomery County, Maryland. I mean, you have to bring in a lot of industries so that if one collapses or takes a hit, you still have a lot of employers around. And that has been our master plan pretty much from the beginning.
Well, we certainly learned that in the Great Recession, that we became too much of a government town. We're always going to be a government town, and that's a good thing because we are close to the government, and there's always going to be contracting services and other things to do. But it's not enough, and the federal government has permanently cut back on its contracting, especially in defense and intelligence, where we boomed 15 years ago. So we need a broader economy that's doing other things. It's going to take time to build that. We have an economic plan in the county to do that. It's not going to happen overnight. And it might be several years down the line as we start to build into that. So we've got to get from here to there. And after 8 years of kind of a stalled economy, people's expectations, things that they want, things that they need, is increasing. Our ability to pay as citizens really is not increasing because we're not making more money. So it's a real challenge to try to say, how do you close a teacher pay gap? You can put it off for several years. At some point you say, I don't know if we can put this off. We need to hire more police officers and firefighters. We delayed that for several years. How much longer do we delay hiring police officers? We hired a couple a year ago to help with the Silver Line, but we know we need more because we're growing in population. We know we need more firefighters. We're building 24-story buildings. We need the equipment to get up there if there's a fire. So public safety staffing is a big priority of the county. And our mental health programs, again, because the state is so deficient in what it does. We have a Diversion First program, which is going to be, I think, a national model.
I think so too.
For helping divert people into treatment, out of incarceration. We need some funding for those things. Those are good programs. This isn't about adding waste. This isn't about welfare queens. That went out 20 years ago with welfare reform. This is about teacher pay, more police on the street, more firefighters, and mental health. And are we going to have the ability to fund that or not?
And I think you make a very articulate case for why people need to consider what we value as a community, what they have as a priority, and what we're all willing to do to help to pay for it. Because stagnant wages, yes, is something that everybody is feeling, but teachers are feeling it more than anyone else.
And the real estate property tax, it's gotten too high. We need a different source.
Thank you for being with us. Join us after the break, and we'll get back to speak with Kim Adams one more time about the things we need to consider as we move toward November 8th and deciding on this referendum here in Fairfax County on this meals tax.
Yeah, sure.
I helped turn my child's public school into a whole new kind of school. One with a curriculum that really motivates kids. One that has extended hours, 6 days a week, year-round. With loads of academic, cultural, and recreational activities. One that has support services like medical and dental right there. A school where parents' involvement is encouraged. Where teachers have more time to teach. And students are excited about learning. There's just one problem. My child doesn't ever want to come home. You can help turn your school into a community school for excellence. Find out how. Call 1-877-LOVE-TO-LEARN.
It's coming. Right to your neighborhood. And when it does, you may be surprised. It's your Social Security statement of your benefits, and it's going to help you plan your financial future. Your benefit statement will tell you how much Social Security you're eligible to receive and when you'll get it. Then you'll know how much you need to save for retirement, because that's coming too. The future is in your hands. Choose to save.
The toxic fumes from this meth lab are seeping into Jamie's sinus cavity. Ammonia vapors invade her throat. Toxic gases fill her lungs. Jamie's body is deteriorating. And she doesn't even know it.
Jamie, dinner.
So, who has a drug problem now? Find out how meth affects you at drugfree.org/.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed. This is our last segment. We had scheduled Pat Hines, who is chair of the Fairfax County School Board. She has been caught in a meeting that has run over, so I brought back Kim Adams to just wrap the show and talk a little bit more about going forward, what kind of questions the public voters need to be asking in teasing apart the nuances of this issue when it comes to the meals tax referendum. Welcome back, Kim.
Thanks.
So we were talking before about the fact that we have very little ability to diversify our income. I think John Cook did a wonderful job in the last segment in really laying out the limitations and the options. The referendum has been voted on by the Board of Supervisors. People will have the opportunity on November 8th to give an up or down vote. What are some of the things that they really need to be asking themselves as far as the core values of what our school systems hold and what it's going to take to fund them?
Well, I think you hit it right there with core values, and it's not necessarily just the school system. It was mentioned by John about having to hire more police officers, more fire. The more urban we become, the larger we grow, the more we have needs. And mental health is certainly something we've seen a lot of issues with in the near past. So everything around our schools as a core value is important. Everything around our county services is a core value. So our residents really need to ask themselves, do I want to diversify my revenues for my county in this way? Am I willing to put that extra 4% up when I'm eating out, which most of us would consider a luxury on a regular basis? And is this something that actually will help me have a relief from some of my property tax? And can we keep that stable for a little while longer?
Looking forward, I've done several different shows or had several different guests on Inside Scoop in the past about those in the IDD community, those who are in the intellectually and developmentally disabled community. And our school systems have a large population of those students. Back years ago when we were working on autism insurance reform, the number was 1 in 88. And I think it was Juliet Hisney who said the number is like 1 in 64 is students being diagnosed with autism. And those are just one segment of services that are very expensive to offer. We also have services for students who speak English as a second language. We also have a high population of poor students. The percentage of free and reduced lunches goes up every year because these students are in homes where literally they're not getting enough to eat. So when you talk about what it is you're going to cut or where it is that we can trim, what do you think there is there that we could cut and not in some way impact what I see as a growing demand for services?
Yeah, you're right. And with a kindergarten class this year starting with a poverty level of 35%, we definitely have to consider how our county has changed and what kind of needs we have. As John Cook mentioned, we have a lot of services that we provide locally that should be more highly subsidized by the state and the federal government, and they're not being. So we know what's right for our kids here in Fairfax County, and we do all that for them. But you're right, we can't consider cutting those programs. We can't consider cutting back what we do to keep our schools world class. And I think that's where our residents need to think about their ties to our schools, how our education system makes sure that they have a safe community to live in, that we actually provide the workforce of the future, and we keep kids on a path towards excellence.
Well, John Cook mentioned the Diversion First program, which is something I know Sheriff Stacey Kincaid has been working on very hard after the tragedy that happened in our county city jail. And it really did highlight, as did the unfortunate death of Creedeed's son, that we lack mental health services. People end up in schools unsupported, they end up in jails unsupported, they're in our communities unsupported. And a lot of people keep talking about having to put more money into mental health services, but again, there's no money at the state level. It's not being funded.
Right. And that collaboration of services between our county and our schools is really becoming critical. There's a county schools program that's working together between all the programs and services in Fairfax County to make sure there's linkage between what we do in the schools, what we do in the county, how do those programs interact, how do parents and teachers and guidance counselors and social workers know what's available and what they have as options. So the Diversion First is one piece of the puzzle, but there's so much more to it. And we need to do what's best for the residents in Fairfax County, and I think that these residents who live in Fairfax County want to have a happy, healthy place to live, and one step is this meals tax.
Well, I think it's something that people really need to be educated about, because it's very easy to get kind of sucked into a bumper sticker slogan war,
right,
and to repeat talking points which may or may not fully explain the situation. And I see it heating up. I've been to several different events this weekend where people were talking about the meals tax, and there's a lot of passion behind it, both for, but particularly against. And are there any upcoming events? Are there online resources for people who are genuinely interested in finding out more about this? Where can they go for information?
So we definitely have some resources that are being provided by different organizations. There's coalitions out there between organizations such as mine, the Fairfax Education Association, and others, trying to get the word out to the community. One place that they can go is investinfairfax.org. That's investinfairfax.org, because we know that this is an investment in our future, in our community. So that's one coalition that's working together on this.
I'm going to anticipate or hope or ask Jim Corcoran if the Chamber won't also convene they're very excellent at pulling together lots of people from the community, people who are experts in their field, to have discussions. And I think this is actually one of the greatest benefits of the Northern Virginia Chamber of Commerce, is their ability to bring in talented experts to sit down and have forums that really speak in great detail to these issues. And I'd like to see us convene something where everybody's sitting down together and figuring out the best way to move forward. Because again, lining up restaurants against schools is not good for the county. And so I do think going forward, if there are people out there who in their own small communities can convene groups of people interested in hearing an open discussion about what the money's going for, exactly what the tax is, exactly what the possible ramifications or downsides to this tax might be. What alternatives are there? What would it have to look like if there was ever an alternative? You know, I can see the boards of the supervisors on the Board of Supervisors doing town halls. Yep. I think town halls are appropriate in this instance for people to get out and really talk about moving forward as Fairfax County. What do we value, and how are we going to get there?
Yeah, I agree. And Catherine, there will be a piece that will be mailed to every home in the fall when this is coming out, after it's approved by the Circuit Court, to give an unbiased opinion of the meals tax, to tell you what it is, and that, you know, very fact-based piece. And then, you know, we will have a lot of education to do for the public about what are the pros and what are the cons. And, you know, it's good that we can have that dialogue, and we want to have that dialogue. We want to make sure that members of the community are informed when they go to the polls on November 8th. That's what we need.
Well, we need to do it too, because you know, people need to understand that votes have consequences. They have an impact.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people, I wasn't aware until recently that in Austin, Texas, Uber and Lyft both pulled out because there was a referendum to repeal a fingerprint ordinance, and the people chose not to repeal it, and so Uber and Lyft just pulled out. They just shut down their system, and too bad. And so 10,000 Uber drivers and everybody in Austin can't use that service. And you have to wonder, when people went to the polls, did they understand what they were voting for? And did they understand what the impact would be? Because those two services said, if you keep this requirement, then we're out. And knowing that that happened in Austin makes me consider even more the ramifications if this doesn't pass, and we hit another watershed moment where something happens where we need revenue, and we've now passed on the opportunity to have it.
Right. And I think, knowing that this is one of the only sources that we can tap into to diversify, we need to take the advantage of it if we can. If it's something that we know isn't going to be a burden on the taxpayer, it isn't going to be a burden on the restaurateurs, and it's something that's going to be a boon to the success of Fairfax County, because we are at a critical point, I believe, in Fairfax County, and whether we move forward with some strength or whether we continue this path of possible withering within an infrastructure that is well past its age, and making sure that we're going to be able to make those improvements really will rely, I believe, heavily on this meals tax.
Well, I'm a very optimistic person by nature anyway. I really am. I believe that most people want the best outcome. We just all have a different way of getting there.
Right.
And I think the more we can talk about it and the more we can listen to each other, the more informed we are. And there's more that brings us together than divides us if we can just get past sort of the divisiveness in how we talk about it. And so the school board and the Board of Supervisors has an all-day retreat tomorrow, and I am very hopeful and extremely optimistic that both of those boards really do want to figure out what the path forward is. And as a result of that work meeting tomorrow, I hope they will come back to us, both boards will come back to us and say, this is how we're going to convene open dialogue in our community so that people understand before they get there on November 8th the consequences of their vote. And the website again is Invest in Fairfax. And what kind of information are you going to have on there for people?
So it's more information about what the meals tax is, what it can do for our community, and that there's a vote on November 8th. So very basic, very good information, and then some links to county resources.
That's fantastic. And are you available to speak? Because I know that you did a wonderful presentation for the Dulles area Democrats, and you were very insightful. I think people walked away with a greater understanding. Is that something, if people want you to come and talk to their Rotary Club, which are coming to mind, or other groups, that you're available to do that?
Sure, definitely available when I can be.
Mm-hmm. So would the best way for people to reach you be through Invest Through Fairfax, or how should people reach out to you?
They can find me through the Fairfax Education Association, president at Fairfax Education Association.
President at Fairfax Education Association. Yeah. And you're actually stepping down from that post in July?
My term ends. We are a single-term office, so I've had a 3-year term. It's been a wonderful term to be able to lead educators in Fairfax County, but my term does end July 31.
So Kevin Nickerson is taking over on August 1st, and guess who the guest is on my show August 1st?
Kevin Hickerson.
Kevin Hickerson, there you go. So there you go. Before we say goodbye, and I do want to really talk to the people of Fairfax County and Fairfax City too, because we contract our services from the county. This is an important issue. Education is tied to so much of the health of our economic region, and so are restaurants for that matter. And there is so much that is connected about this, that this is not the time to be shouting at each other about this issue. We need to listen carefully. I would love for the chamber to figure out how we can all sit down and listen more carefully to each other and find a better path forward. The people who built George Mason University, we talked about them a little earlier, and I frequently see them. They were very much an education first, education forward group of thinking people, business people. And we have built a tremendous nationally recognized school system, and it is not something we want to see wither. So please, stay tuned, be informed, find out more information. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. Kim, you have just enlightened us so much with the points you made, and I hope this is the beginning of this dialogue that we are going to have going forward.
I hope so too. Thanks, Catherine.